If this podcast stinks, it's because I have Tom Reed and Joe O'Donnell doing the play-by-play and color analyst of the Minnesota Wild taking on the Pittsburgh Penguins right now. But this podcast, this topic demands a quick reaction. The Minnesota Vikings make a desperate move, a move that was also much needed after they lost their superstar left tackle, Christian Darrisaw, to an injury on Thursday Night Football against the Los Angeles Rams. The Vikings are adding left tackle from the Jacksonville Jaguars, Cam Robinson. Now, something to think about is that, or just to be aware of, I should say, is that the Minnesota Vikings traded Ezra Cleveland to the Jacksonville Jaguars last year because Dalton Risner was playing so well. So there must be some familiarity between these two organizations because this is the second year in a row the Minnesota Vikings have traded for an offensive lineman or traded a offensive lineman to the Jacksonville Jaguars. But real quick, a little bit about Cam Robinson. He's in a contract year, so he's not a long-term signing for the Minnesota Vikings. I'm sure they'll let them walk in free agency this offseason. He's a classic rental player. And this is a important move for this reason specifically. Ed Ingram has been playing terribly this season, to be nice. And one of the possible suggestions was having Blake Brandel, who's been very stout as an offensive lineman this year, moving him to Christian Darrisaw's left tackle spot, and then, the Pittsburgh Penguins just scored on a power play. Penguins up 1-0 on Fleury's return to Pittsburgh. Come on, gotta win. But anyways, what makes this move so important is that this allows Dalton Risner to replace Ed Ingram. Instead of Brandel switching over to Christian Darrisaw's spot, Dalton Risner taking Brandel's spot. Then this allows Dalton Risner to slip in for the terrible performing Ed Ingram. So this is a big move from that standpoint. It allows the Minnesota Vikings offensive line to remain as strong and as powerful as they can be. Another thing to consider in this trade, which was brought to me by ProFootballRumors.com, the Jacksonville Jaguars are practically in sell now mode. They dropped to 2-6. They lost their receiver Christian Kirk to the season. Trevor Lawrence hasn't been performing very well. So the Minnesota Vikings took advantage of an amazing opportunity. They looked at a spot that they needed following the Darrisaw injury. They looked at a team that stinks, that are looking to sell, and they found a left tackle that they can rent for the rest of the season, and they could get rid of him to free agency. They can let him walk. So this is a great move, a great decision by Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah. I applaud the Minnesota Vikings for doing this because of the things that I already said. Ed Ingram can be replaced when Dalton Risner is healthy, and that could happen, this Sunday for the Minnesota Vikings. Another thing to look at is Cam Robinson's statistics this season. Now, I don't subscribe to Pro Football Focus, but they allowed a little sneak peek kind of things, and here's a few things. Sacks allowed 4th. That's tied for 9th in the NFL this season. And penalties, he's going to fit right in with the Minnesota Vikings pre-snap penalties because he ranks tied for 34th in penalties this season with 3. So, not the strongest in that area, but seems like a tremendous pass blocker and seems like a good fit for the Minnesota Vikings offensive line. And the Minnesota Vikings took advantage of a team that's looking to sell, and they get it. A player that they don't have to worry about long term, which is advantage Minnesota Vikings in this situation. A tweet quick from Judd Zolgad, who is, of course, Purple Daily, Score North, great Minnesota Vikings follower. In that aspect, he mentioned that Cam Robinson whom the Vikings just acquired, was benched last Sunday for backup tackle Walker Little. Robinson, 29, had started all 91 games he played for the Jaguars. He was coming off a concussion and had been cleared. Doug Peterson decided to stick with Little. So, he was benched, opens up the market for him, and he clearly has talent. So the Minnesota Vikings are trying to take advantage of a rent now, hope he kind of finds something in the second half of the season, and this allows the Vikings offensive line to remain as stout and as strong as possible. So fantastic move for the Minnesota Vikings. I got to get back to work. The Minnesota Wild are still down 1-0.